Okay, so I'm going to talk a bit about diagnosis of mental health and how just having a diagnosis can help you manage it, and how important it is. So I'm going to try and do it in sort of like a 5 things format to keep my train of thought. I've recorded this video so many times and I just go off on tangents. So the first thing that is important about having a diagnosis is for your self-esteem and your self-image. When you are struggling to do things that everyone around you is doing and you don't know why, you think everybody feels like this, you think everybody feels this tired and this drained and this stressed and this tense and this overwhelmed, and they're just doing it anyway and you can't. That is a massively different feeling from knowing that you have a mental illness and that it is a disability and that it is not something that you can control, and it's not something everybody else is feeling all the time when they're doing these things. And that can be vitally important, to just know that it's not your fault. Secondly, there is the community aspect of it. There is the fact that knowing that you're not the only one who's dealing with these feelings, and that there are other people out there who are struggling in the same way that you are, that understand what you're going through, even if they don't understand every minute detail. It is very empowering to think it's not just something wrong with you, it's not just how you are, it is something that you have in common with all these other people who are managing it too, and who are fighting this fight too. Thirdly is the obvious, having a diagnosis means that you have access to therapy and medication and support, sometimes to benefits or to like extra time on exams or coursework if you're at uni or at college. Fourthly is how people relate to you. So for instance, my mum has always known that I had depression. She knew how to recognise that, but we didn't know about anxiety. So it massively affected our relationship when I would have anxiety responses that made me irritable or melodramatic that she didn't know were anxiety responses. So I might go into hysterics or physically flinch away from her, or get really, really irritable for no reason, or fly off the handle and be waving around and shouting and not know what I was doing. And that was very difficult for our relationship, which was already pretty strained. We're very, very close and always have been, but there have been moments where that has really, really damaged it, because we didn't know how to communicate to each other, because we didn't know how to understand what was going on with me and why I was reacting in this way. So having a diagnosis, something that you can tell people, that when you're flinching away, you don't just go, I don't know, when they ask you why you've done that. You can go, because I have anxiety and that triggered it and I went into fight or flight. That massively changes the game when it comes to communicating with people. If they can say, oh right, well let's figure out what we do next then, instead of, why are you doing that? If they can get a straight answer out of you and they can understand why you're behaving a certain way, it's easier for them to relate to you and to communicate with you. Whereas if they don't know that you're having a panic attack or having an anxiety reaction or having a depressive episode, they might think that you are avoiding them, or that you're scared of them, or that you're trying to manipulate them, or all these other really, really unpleasant things. And then there's also the aspect of understanding the physiological and the mental processes that are behind it. So if you have a diagnosis, you're able to get access to that information on how your brain and your body are working. So as I say with the fight and flight thing, when you have an anxiety response, it's not always just a mental thing, which is hard enough in and of itself. Your brain is pretty much, it is in control of everything that you do and think. It is also a physical response. Your brain and your body are telling you that what you are trying to make it do are dangerous. So your brain turns off, essentially. It is just that it narrows down to the primal part of your brain that is in control of survival. All your executive functioning, all of your thought processes, all of your analytical brain function goes away. It is just this part here which is telling you, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, we're going to die, we're going to die, we're going to die. It's like doing a bungee jump or some other kind of thing where it's more logical that you would feel afraid, but you're having that response to something mundane and everyday, like leaving the house or getting on a bus or answering the phone or talking to a cashier. You know, it's not something that you can control or even anticipate all the time. It is a physiological response to what's happening. And with depression, you know, if you understand that you are producing not enough of some neurochemicals and too much of some, that the balance is off, that it's affecting how you sleep, it's affecting how well your brain functions as well. It's something that is always happening. It's not something that it's just when you feel really, really sad. It's right there when you're overanalyzing things, when you're struggling to sleep, when you are making decisions over what to eat or where to go or who to talk to. It's always there. It's always affecting those processes. It's easier to understand that when you do something that is exciting, something positive, it's easier to understand that you might actually crash from that. You might have a day after that where you are unable to function. It's very, very difficult if you don't understand those processes to think, okay, but I just did something really good. Why am I not happy? Why is this had the opposite effect? Why am I feeling so terrible when I've done something that by all rights should make me feel great? If you know that it's because you just wiped out your brain, you've just exhausted it, you can think, oh right, well that's why, and you can rest and you can plan around that and you can just let it pass and know that it's not that you're incapable of being happy, it's that you're tired and you need to recover. And it makes it so much easier with all these points combined to manage your mental health, because you have the access to the support, you have the communication with the people around you, you have the ability to analyse how you're reacting and why, and what's going on in your brain and your body at the time. So you can plan recovery periods, you can plan contingency plans, you can analyse the thought processes that are making you depressed or anxious or giving you paranoid thoughts even, and you can really break those down. Whereas without a diagnosis, you are left with, this is how I am. This is something that is wrong with me as a person, and this is something that I am never going to be able to do anything about. So, I mean, I probably waffled just as much as I did in my other videos there, but I feel like I did sort of cover the points that I meant to at least. So yeah, I would also like to add that self-diagnosis, while with some things can be very dodgy ground, it can be just as valid. It's sometimes very difficult for people for a variety of reasons, including their mental illness itself, to go and get a diagnosis. If you are reading articles or watching videos or finding these resources and you're thinking that's me and that's why I'm having these reactions and that's why I'm behaving this way and thank God, that's fine. You don't need to justify that to anybody. That is valid. That is how you are feeling. And you don't need to feel like because you've not gone out there and got a piece of paper with it written on, that you're not allowed to talk to people and get support and get help. It is perfectly fine for you to think, I think I have social anxiety because I have these responses, and I think I'm now going to look up how people manage with social anxiety. That's only ever going to be a positive. You don't need to feel bad because you haven't got a diagnosis or haven't got a diagnosis yet. You can do that in your own time if you choose to. So yeah, I'm going to stop waffling now, but I hope I hope that's helpful to people, at least in some respect, because I know that it can be very daunting to identify with a mental illness, or to get a diagnosis, or to get help. But I'd just like people to realise that just knowing what is going on in your brain can be life-changing, and I would strongly advise anyone who thinks that they might have a mental health condition to look into how those processes work, so that they can move forward and manage how that affects their lives.